Hey there, everyone. Bryan here from the Oraculos School of Astrology with yet another episode of Mychal Fix My Stars, where I help people from our live audience navigate some of the challenges that they find themselves facing within their lives from the perspective of assessing their natal chart and whatever else I choose to pull out, truth be told. If this is your first time checking out Mychal Fix My Stars, we have another episode out on our live library on YouTube, and we also have that episode out on Spotify. So please do go and check that out if you want to see what this is about, and also just stick around today so that you can dive into these stories and these questions and these real life examples of people's real life issues. One of the things that is very important to me, astrologically speaking, is that we do astrology for real people. I think that a lot of astrology today tends to be done using the charts of celebrities or using the charts of public figures whose lives we only know tangentially. We will only ever have a bird's eye view of the things that occur within those people's lives, unless you, of course, are the astrologer to the stars. And that star in question is somebody who's giving you direct insight and information in some of the nuances that they find themselves facing. However, for me, this has never really been an exciting moment of learning, and this hasn't really represented the best way of teaching astrology because, one, we only do have the information that gets fed to us through the media about public figures, and two, because astrology takes place in the trenches. And the trenches of astrology is the space of astrological client work. So, from my very first astrological beginnings, I've always been far more curious about the real charts of real people who we have direct contact with and who we can be in conversation with as a means of not only learning astrology, but also as a means of teaching astrology. So, at the Oraculos School of Astrology, we have an absolute no celebrity chart policy. I've never read a celebrity chart at Oraculos in my entire existence, and I never plan to, because for me, that isn't what is most exciting about what we do. So today we're going to be diving into the charts of a few people who we already have in the background in our online studio. And I'm super excited to share this information with you, but also to show you my personal approach to astrological troubleshooting. If this is something that you're interested in being a part of, or if this is something that you are interested in having done for yourself. So if you want to be one of our guests on an episode of Mychal Fix My Stars or any of our blind chart reading demonstrations, then please make sure to go down below and subscribe to the Oraculos Podcast wherever you find us on the internet, because we do this service for people who are a part of our Oraculos community. So make sure to subscribe to the Oraculos Podcast by going down below and hitting the subscription button. And also, if you don't already listen to us over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, please make sure that you do so over there as well. And also, a final piece, which I've been told I need to remember to say, is that even if you are just here for the beginning of the video, or if you're not going to be here for the entire thing, please make sure that you go down below and also like this video so that gods and the algorithm podcast gods can make sure that more and more people are exposed to the work that we're doing over here on the Oraculos Podcast. So please do give yourself a moment, go down below and make sure to like this video if you're watching on YouTube, just so that YouTube can do what it should do, which is pay us our. So, before we dive in, I do want you all to see that I'm wearing my Oraculos apparel. And in the Bahamas, and I do have to say on the note, in the Bahamas, today is the Independence Day of Bahamas. We have been around for quite a bit, and the Bahamas became independent on July 10th, 1973. So today is a very big deal as far as Bahamian independence is concerned. So shout out to all of the Bahamians who are currently tuned in and listening to the Oraculos Podcast right now. In the Bahamas, we have a word, and that word is Tingsy, Tigsy. And depending on what part of the Bahamas you're from, the Bahamas has 700 islands and keys. 700. It's an archipelago. So depending on where you're from, you might even say Tingzy with a Z. So Tignszy, Tingzy. All of that said, in the Bahamas, we have this word which is tingsy, which means that you like stuff, like you like tings, basically. And I have always been a tingsy person. And not even a tingsy person in terms of like technology and stuff. I've always been a tingsy person in terms of things that feel like my own. And so when the spirit moved within me to start making merchandise for the Oraculos School of Astrology, I completely embrace that wholeheartedly. So here you see I'm wearing my Oraculos sweatshirt. It's our tri-blend fleece sweatshirt with the Oraculos School of Astrology logo on the front. And you've always seen me wear this Oraculos t-shirt with Oraculos School of Astrology. And let me show you the goodie bag. This is our Oraculos tote bag. I'm showing you all of this because our Oraculos store is now open and available over on our website. You can visit www.oraculos.com astrology.com/shop and check out our Oraculos shop over there where you can buy all of your wonderful Oraculos merchandise. Here's another shirt that we have. No, that's inside out. Can't show you that. Here's another shirt that we have. This is the vintage red. Oh my goodness, this is also inside out. They're inside out because I was trying them on because once again, I'm a tingsy person and I was trying them on to see which one I wanted to wear today. But this is our vintage red Oraculos School of Astrology shirt. And we also have one in blue. This is kind of my favorite color, the Oraculos School of Astrology. And we also have one in green as well. And all of these are absolutely wonderfully soft shirts that feel amazing on the skin. This is our Oraculos School of Astrology Black Forest t-shirt. We also have our tote bags for sale. Here's our red tote bag. And also, yesterday, I spent my entire afternoon signing copies of both my books, Mastering Traditional Astrology, as well as Horary Astrology and The Natal Promise. And I've never, there was this thing that came online, like a meme of Raven Simone saying that her hand hurts when she signs autographs because she has to sign so many autographs. And her shady co-host was like, which mountain of autographs are people bringing you on a daily basis? However, yesterday I completely understood what she meant because I signed over 80 copies of Mastering Traditional Astrology, as well as Horary Astrology and The Natal Promise, which you can purchase now as well by visiting our website at oraculosastrology.com/shop. This says now available on Amazon. So let's take that off because we're trying to direct people to our Oraculos shop page. And we are shipping everywhere within the 50 states of the United States of America. We haven't fully worked out the kinks of doing international shipping yet, but if you're located anywhere within the US of A, then you can buy signed copies of my books, Mastering Traditional Astrology and Horary Astrology and The Natal Promise. And by signed, I mean I literally write a paragraph in some of them, giving you all of my love and all of my blessings and all of my everything. So please do grab yourself a copy of the book. And you can also pick up our t-shirts as well. Anywhere in the US, we are shipping. So please do make sure to go over and do that. And for those of you who aren't based in the United States of America, then we are also having those books for sale over on Amazon. So Amazon is taking care of all of our international shipping. They're not going to be signed copies of the book, but they should feel like signed copies of the book because I put my foot in them. So please, if you are located outside of the US, go grab yourself a copy of Mastering Traditional Astrology, as well as Horary Astrology and The Natal Promise over on Amazon.com. And if you like to be on your phone or your tablet and you want to grab yourself the Kindle version actually looks amazing. For a long time, someone said to me, one of my mentors said to me, Mychal, you didn't upload it like a real Kindle, therefore I don't like it. And so I didn't look at the Kindle version for months and months and months because I thought it was atrocious. And then at NORWAC, one of my students came over and she was like, oh my God, Mychal, the Kindle version is so great. And she showed me it, and the Kindle version looks exactly like the physical version with all of the design elements and all of the things that we love about the physical copy of those books. So Grab yourself a copy on Kindle if you don't want to have the physical copy lugging around with you. And as always, if you've read the books and you've loved the books, then please do leave us a review over on Amazon telling people what you love about the books. Now, finally, before we begin today's presentation, I do want to let you know about our upcoming Natal Astrology Intensive, which is going to be this August 4th to August 10th, 2024. This is Natal Astrology Beyond the Basics. For those of you who have seen me give a blind chart reading before, in this intensive, I'm going to show you everything that I do within the context of giving a blind chart reading. I always, before I give any blind chart reading, give the preamble that giving an astrological demonstration like that isn't necessarily about being perfect, and it isn't necessarily about being 100% accurate, because within the context of any astrologer's life, none of us have practiced all of the astrology there is in the world for us to practice, and none of us have met with all the people that exist within the world for us to have an inexhaustible supply of things to say within the context of our astrology. And all of us as astrologers will always interpret a chart based on the filter of our own client practice, which is a part of why I think client work is so important within the context of anybody's profession of astrology, because the things that come out of our subconscious, or even the things that come out of our conscious mind within the context of reading a client's chart, those things come directly out of a client-based practice. So I'm going to be teaching you everything you need to know about the astrology of health, for example, and how to assess health from a medical astrology perspective within the context of the natal chart. I'll be teaching you traditional approaches to psychological astrology and how to jump free of the burden of talking about the sun, moon, and rising, which, as we know in traditional astrology, there is no big three. There is no sun, moon, and rising version of traditional astrology. So how do we do that? I'm going to be teaching you that in our upcoming natal astrology intensive. Personal financial astrology and knowing how to predict a person's wealth potential in this lifetime, we're also going to be covering. Ancestral astrology and speaking about the dynamics that exist within a family are also going to be covered, as well as romance astrology and marriage astrology, and seeing how a person's love destiny shows up in their natal chart. Finally, we're going to be talking about vocational astrology, which I think is a huge topic, and it's something that we don't really hear about enough. And so we're going to be talking about vocational astrology, not from the traditional version of planets in my 10th house mean this, or aspects to my 10th house mean that, or the sign on the cusp of my 10th house means what I'm going to be when I grow up, but from this more robust planet to planet perspective of astrology that actually allows us to understand a person fully as they are based on the planetary combinations within their chart, and ultimately through that understanding, knowing what sort of career will work best within that person's lifetime. So if this is something that you're excited to do, and if you're excited to learn a clear and a systematic system and an approach to organizing your information as an astrologer, and also a clear and systematic way of deriving a vaster amount of information, concrete, event-based information, not mythological information, not past life information, not future life information, but concrete grounded information that directly reflects the circumstances that people find themselves navigating within their present lived experience, then by all means join us in our upcoming Natal Astrology Intensive this August 4th through August 10th, 2024. And as you all know, this intensive is the beginning of a much larger series of magic-based intensives that we're going to be hosting over here at the Oraculos School of Astrology, all of which you can find out more about by checking out our website over at oraculosastrology.com. Now, without further ado, now that we've gotten the announcements out of the way, I'm going to set up our screen so that I can receive the chart information from my lovely assistant today, who is Anna. As you all know, our broadcast managers over here at the Oraculos School of Astrology are Anna and Joe, without whom I would be a complete hot mess, because I don't know how to do any of this stuff myself, which is why I've never done any of this stuff myself before. And the only people who make me look good in the universe is my Oraculos team. So major shout out to them, without whom I would be a complete shit show. You know, one time somebody called me a shit show because, why did they say it? And truthfully speaking, at that point in my Oraculos experience, I think I was a shit show too. Our audio wasn't really what it should have been. The camera wasn't really what it should have been. So fine. Maybe we were a shit show, but the information has always been absolutely 1,000% as impeccable as I could ever deliver it. And it's been quality information. So thank you all so much for those of you who have stuck around with the Oraculos shit show until it became an Oraculos glory fest. All right. So now we're going to dive into this chart information for today. This is MFMS, and today's date is the 10th of July. Happy Independence, Bahamas, 2024, and this is chart number 1. So Anna, go ahead and give me this person's birth chart details, please.
6/16/1973.
So that's June.
June 6, 1973.
Hold on, say that again.
June 6.
You just said 16 a while ago. Was it?
Yeah, I meant June 6, 1973.
June 6, 1973. So this is also an important point because depending on where you are, if you're based in the US, you're probably going to list the month first and then the day. If you're based anywhere else in the entire world, you're probably going to list the day first and then the month. So whenever you're submitting a chart to an astrologer, whether you're doing that for a broadcast such as this, or whether you're doing that just in life in general, and an astrologer asks you for your birth chart information, please spell it out. So don't say 6, whatever. Please always spell out and say June, whatever, 19, whatever, because culturally speaking, for me, from the Bahamas, I would always list the day before the month. And it could be very, very wrong if your version of 9/11 is September 11th and my version of 9/11 is November 9th. So that's just something that we can do to help streamline the process and also help our astrologers within the context of getting a reading. Time of birth?
11:34 p.m.
11:34 p.m. Place of birth?
I'll spell it Edirine, Turkey.
Edirine, Turkey.
Yeah.
Turkia. Edirine, Turkey. Okay, so we have a list of options that came up, and so I'll share my screen para que tú sepas, so that you can see what the list of options are. But honestly, if we can't figure this out quickly, then let's go to the other person down on the list. So I'll share my screen so that both you can see the list of options that we have showing up, and so that this person can see the list of options that we have showing up, so that if it's a thing where we don't actually know the information that we need, we can go on to the next person on the list. And I've already given you instructions for how to go about that.
Edirne.
Edirne. This says
Edirne.
Okay. Edi. Great, because I think initially, you had said EDR, and so let me do EDIRNE. Is that it? Turkey. Perfection. Here, what do I put here? Male, female?
Female.
Wonderful. So here within this chart, we see 28 degrees Capricorn rising, 41 minutes. Just confirm with this lady that this is her chart. And actually, we can bring her on in the call. So let's bring her into the studio. Hi there.
She needs to unmute herself.
Okay, so you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Michael. Can you hear me?
Hi there. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing pretty great. What's your question?
I've got lots of problems with the 7th house, regarding 7th house. So if you see anything, you can go ahead and do whatever you want to do with my chart.
Awesome. Okay, so I just set this up, Anna, so that I should only be sharing the white screen. You're seeing that, yes? Awesome. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So this lady came on the call and she said that the issue that she wants to take a look at today is her seventh house issues. Now, as we all know, the houses, and let's actually time this. So this is a 20-minute timed situation. Thank you. So as we all know, the houses are representing various topics of our lives. And Joe just made an amazing first video to our upcoming houses series, and you can find that video over on YouTube. I'm so delighted with Joe's work. It's kind of amazing. And so please go and check out the introduction to our upcoming houses series, which is now out on YouTube. It's the last video that we actually posted as an actual video, not as a live. So the houses represent discrete areas of our human concern, and the seventh house is the specific house that's charged with this responsibility over our love affairs in general. Now, between Western astrology and Eastern astrology, we tend to differentiate between the fifth house representing love, marriage within Indian astrology, and the seventh house representing arranged marriage within the context of Indian astrology. We do not have this distinction present within Western astrology anywhere at all. Therefore, the seventh house is our go-to house for all matters of love in general. Now, the first thing that I saw when I opened up this chart was that she has the moon in a square relationship with Neptune. And for me, from a medical astrology perspective, I see Moon square Neptune, and my automatic thought goes to the gut. And the reason for that is because Moon Neptune is one of our classical signatures. And classical according to whom? Classical since the discovery of Neptune. Moon Neptune is one of our signatures for somebody who has a weakened digestive fire. So this could represent somebody with a slower metabolism in general. And it can also represent somebody with a digestive system that is overly sensitive, where they have a vast array of gut-based allergies that they face within this lifetime. So that's one of the things that I automatically saw just coming into this chart, because from a medical astrology perspective, we tend to highlight our very tight, hard aspects as being specifically significant of things that are morbificant within the lifetime of a person. So even independent of us speaking about her specific love story, which is also signified by this Moon Neptune, my immediate urge is to go and investigate how this Moon Neptune is manifesting for her within her digestive system. So that's one of the things that I would do with the Moon Neptune, just looking at her chart, independent of even looking at the moon as the specific significator of her marital partners. Can we find out from this lady if the marital partners would be heterosexual? Wonderful. So independent of the things that we would say about this Moon Neptune regarding her marital partners or her love romances with men in general, I would look at this Moon Neptune based on what this moon universally is signifying. Within traditional astrology, planets have two significations. A planet can either be a universal significator based on what that planet signifies in general, i.e. the moon signifying the mother in general, and the moon also signifying the gut in general. Those are the universal things that we apply to the moon as a planet within traditional astrology. And on that spectrum of the moon representing the mother and the moon representing the gut, one of the things that we do at the Oraculos School of Astrology within our approach to medical astrology is we have a four-pillared approach to how we look at any chart from a medical perspective. I'm giving this background so that we can come to the foreground and eventually speak about her specific marital issues or romantic issues, which are very evident based on the moon and the Neptune combination. But before we dive into that, I want to give some context for what we would do with this from a medical astrology perspective. The first pillar of our approach to medical astrology at the Oraculos School of Astrology is that we first want to identify the soul and the psyche of the native. In essence, we want to understand who is the person who has this particular chart within this lifetime. Because once we understand the soul and the psyche of the native, which according to Guido Bonatti is something that we assess through an assessment of the first house, its ruler, aspects to the first house cusp, and planets in the first house. Once we understand the soul and the psyche of the native, then we can go on to speak about some of the things that ail the native within this lifetime. Because how a person who is signified by Saturn Saturn deals with an ailment is going to be very different from how a person who is signified by Mercury deals with an ailment. So we want to understand the planetary constitution of this person so that we can understand how this person responds to life in general. The second prong of our Oraculos version of medical astrology is we then want to take a look at the chart and see how that chart is describing the fundamental constitution of that person. Because before we can go into speaking about the morbificant planetary combinations that exist within that person's chart, we have to understand what that person's foundational structural being is in this lifetime to begin with. You can't talk about what's broken about a person until you know what is foundationally true about that person within the context of their physical body. So we do want to secondly take a look at the general constitution of that person as described by their natal promise. And then the third thing that we do is we take a look at the morbificant planetary combinations. From a traditional astrological perspective, the word morbificant is referring to any planets within our chart that have the ability to cause our constitution to descend into disease or sickness. So from a traditional astrological perspective, when we're looking for the morbificant planet or the morbificant planetary combinations, we're looking for the planet or the combinations of planets that specifically denote or that specifically describe what is most likely to fall out of whack, or what is most likely to be an area of disease that we face within our bodies within this lifetime. That is known as the morbificant. Traditionally speaking, we would usually look for one planet that is representing the morbificant planet within a horary chart, for example. However, from a natal astrological perspective, any planets that exist in hard aspect with each other have the ability to manifest as morbificants within the life of a person. This also includes planets that are in hard aspect by declination, meaning that they're in a parallel or contraparallel relationship, or planets that are in hard aspect by mundane aspects, meaning the Paran relationships between planets. For example, Venus in any hard aspect relationship with Pluto, whether that is Venus-Pluto in a regular schmegular zodiacal hard aspect, Venus-Pluto in hard aspect by declination, or Venus and Pluto in a mundane square. From a Paran perspective, Venus-Pluto has to do with abnormal functioning of the parts of our constitution that are Venusian. The parts of our constitution that are Venusian are going to be, for the most part, the womb within the charts of women, as well as the thyroid within the charts of anyone. So Venus-Pluto as a hard aspect combination can have to do with abnormal overgrowths within the womb, which is why we oftentimes see women with endometriosis, which is the growth of the endometrial lining outside of the uterus on other surrounding organs. Women who often have endometriosis are presenting with the Venus-Pluto in hard aspect combination, whether in the zodiac or in declination or via Parans. The same is also true in terms of in this chart the same is also true, in terms of the quincunx. The quincunx also is manifesting as a morbificant planetary combination that directly has the ability to point towards something that is ill or something that is unwell or something that has a propensity towards descending into disease or sickness within the life of that person. For those of you who want to know the orbs that I use a 5 to 7 degree orb in terms of regular schmegular traditional astrology hard aspects, and I wince at an 8-degree orb. And when it comes to declination, when it comes to semi-squares and sesquiquadrates, and when it comes to mundane aspects, otherwise known as parans, I use a 1-degree orb. So coming back to her chart, the moon Neptune from a universal perspective has to do with the gut. It has to do with the gut, the stomach, and moon Neptune together oftentimes denotes people who have a vast array of gut health issues or a vast array of gut health sensitivities where they're allergic to water, they're allergic to dust, they're allergic to this thing, they're allergic to that thing, because the moon is signifying the gut universally speaking, and Neptune is signifying a force within our lives that weakens whatever it is in hard aspect with. So that is the moon as a universal significator. However, The moon within this lady's chart isn't just holding her universal significations, she's also holding a specific signification based on the specific house that this moon is ruling. The moon is specifically ruling her seventh house. With the moon ruling the seventh house, that means that within this lady's chart, the moon is going to stand as the specific significator of her husband or of her masculine love connections within this lifetime. So when we take a look at this moon in the square relationship with Neptune, the first thing I think would be L7, or ruler of my seventh house in a square relationship with Neptune. How does that manifest? That oftentimes can manifest as a deceitful partner. That oftentimes can manifest as a partner who is sick physically, but it also can manifest as a partner who is navigating their own addictive tendencies. When we have a partner afflicted by Neptune, that oftentimes can signify a partner who is suffering from some alcohol abuse issues. And as a result of that person's alcohol abuse issues, we have to be the midwife of that person's return to health, essentially, which is disappointing in anybody's love relationship. However, if this isn't an alcoholism that's occurring here, the moon in the square relationship with Neptune, or the ruler of her seventh house in a square relationship with Neptune, can specifically denote that the partner in this lifetime is showing up as a source of disappointment. We get the word partner from the moon representing her partner specifically. We also get the word disappointment from the Neptune representing disappointment and disillusionment in general. This much we already know about her because this much is what she's already said. From a universal perspective, this moon is also having to do with the mother. And very often when we find a person with moon, Neptune, it can represent that the mother was sick, the mother was unwell, the mother didn't have the ability to show up robustly in my life, and therefore my mother is also representing a source of disappointment within my life. Which is why when people have the moon, Neptune, it's showing this overall sense of a lack or a sense of disappointment in terms of how I am nurtured. When we're born, how we're nurtured is through the lineage of the mother or through the influence of the mother. And therefore, if we have this sense of not being nurtured by the mother in general, that later on can manifest within our physiological bodies as us not being able to nurture ourselves from the perspective of the food that we take into ourselves and from the perspective of our body's ability to handle the food in a way that is robust and healthy. Another indication that points towards the direction of a digestive health issue within this chart. And I know that the digestive health isn't specifically what she's asking about, but I do want to talk about it because we're looking at it. And then we're going to talk about, once again, how we can navigate this story of the partner within this lifetime. Within certain circles of traditional astrology, there is this thought that if a planet is in a sign, such as the moon in Virgo, and afflicted in that sign by another planet, such as this moon in Virgo afflicted by the Neptune, then the sign or the part of the body that corresponds with that sign that's being afflicted is a part of the body that's going to be afflicted within this lifetime. We know that Virgo is representing the intestines in general. However, from a traditional astrological perspective, Virgo can also be thought of as representing the digestive system in general. So this affliction of the moon and the Neptune could have to do with a digestive health issue, more so within the earlier part of this lady's digestive system in terms of the connection between the stomach and the intestines. That connection, the base of the stomach is called the pylorus, and the separation between the stomach and the first part of the small intestine, called the duodenum. Some people say duodenum, I say duodenum because I'm from the Caribbean. That first portion of the small intestine, known as the duodenum, is going to correspond more readily with this earlier part of the sign of Virgo. So this could be specifically referring to issues within this part of this lady's constitution, the base of the stomach, the pylorus, and the beginning of the small intestines, which would be the duodenum. And so the moon-Neptune combination could show a potential weakness within this part of her constitution in general. Now, moving on back to the topic of speaking about her heterosexual relationships with men. Within the charts of heterosexual women, the son is going to stand as a proxy of not just that woman's father, but also of the men who that woman manifests within her life. And from my perspective, because I'm not necessarily sure it's a traditional perspective per se, but from my perspective, the son and hard aspects that the son receives are going to be significant of what, Brain? They're going to be significant of the constitution or the way that the father showed up within the lady's life. So here she has the sun at 15 degrees of Gemini, 58 minutes, in a square relationship with Mars. When we have Sun Mars, it can denote that the men who are manifesting in our lives are martial men. When we say that a man is martial, on the one hand, that can mean that he is courageous and warlike, and he is somebody who is willing to take the bull by the horns. But on another level, that can manifest as a man who is potentially physically abusive and a man who does not know how to hold his anger. Now, we've already seen that she has the moon in a square relationship with Neptune, representing her specific men within her life in general, which gave us some indication that this might manifest as a man who doesn't know how to hold his liquor, a man who might be having addictive tendencies as far as substance abuse is concerned. So if I had to try to make that make sense within the context of her life, we might say that not only does this man have issues as far as substance abuse is concerned, but when he becomes inebriated, he also becomes violent as a result of the sun being in a square relationship with Mars, representing generally violent men within the life of the native. Now, another thing that is corroborative of this that we see within her chart is that by declination, she's having the moon in a contraparallel relationship with Mars. Moon contraparallel Mars is something that we oftentimes see within the charts of. Let me tell you what the ancients say first before I tell you what I say. Traditionally speaking, the moon in any hard aspect relationship with Mars is a combination that has to do with miscarriage. Because according to Dorotheus of Sidon, when a woman is having her moon afflicted by Mars, that is a woman who has to carve the baby out of the womb. Now, within the 21st century, we don't necessarily speak in that way, but this is something that we oftentimes find within the context of miscarriage as a potential reality in general, from a medical astrology perspective. The moon Mars also has to do with an overly acidic digestive system, and is something that we find within the charts of people who are having a lot of acid reflux, otherwise known as GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disorder. That's something that we find with the moon Mars combination. And someone recently brought it to my attention that the moon Mars is also having to do with vomit. And not that someone recently brought it to my attention. I recently was reading the chart of somebody who has vomiting or chronic vomiting as an issue that she faces within her life. And she also had the hard aspect of moon Mars. I think it might have been by declination or it might have been as a Paran combination. But either way, the point is moon Mars can signify those things. Moon Mars also can signify abuse done to women, or women who are violented isn't a word, women who are hurt, or women who are wounded, or women who are somehow placed in an environment that is a chaotic environment, or that's a stressful environment, or that's a harmful environment. Chaos, stress, and harm coming from the Mars, and the moon representing women in general. So this is something that we see showing up over here in the declination table. That's also something worth noting in terms of potentially how these men might be manifesting within her life in general. And very often within our lives, we tend to manifest not just the stories of our individual lives, but we tend to recapitulate and remanifest the stories of our own parents and how their relationship manifested as well. When we look at the declination table, we see that she also has the sun in a parallel relationship with Saturn. And Sun Saturn within anybody's charts means karmic problems with men. And this is Sun Saturn in hard aspect relationship. As you all know, I'm not a very soft aspect person because soft aspects don't really correspond with the manifestation of concrete events. Hard aspects correspond with the manifestation of concrete events, which is why when we talk about the phases of the moon, we don't talk about when the moon is trine the sun. We talk about when the moon is square the sun, when the moon is opposite the sun, when the moon is semi-square the sun, when the moon is sesquiquadrate the sun, because it has always been a part of our collective consciousness that hard aspects makes shit happen. So when I'm talking about this topic of karmic burdens associated with men within the life of the native, we see this through the Sun-Saturn combination, which has to do with karmic burdens associated with the men within the life of the native. Not only is she having a story of the Sun-Mars representing men who may tend towards being violent or aggressive or constantly angry, which isn't necessarily something that she can readily wrap herself around, but she's also having the Sun-Mars, the Sun-Saturn as a combination, which has to do with the karmic problems that manifest within the males within my life, which are going to represent not only her father specifically, but also the imprint of men that she attracts moving on within life in general. So that's something that we see within this chart as far as the masculine theme is represented within her chart. And it's something that is more than likely manifesting within the context of her marital affairs. The last thing that we would do with any chart from the perspective of natal astrology and also from the perspective of talking about love within the horoscope is we would clearly look at Venus. Because as we know, Venus is the universal significatrix of love within anybody's lifetime. And within her chart, she's having the Venus in a square relationship with Pluto. Venus is applying to a sinister square with Pluto in Libra. Like I said earlier, I wasn't even paying attention to her chart specifically. I was just talking about life in general when I gave you the example of Venus-Pluto earlier. But Venus-Pluto is something that we oftentimes see within the charts of women who have abnormal overgrowths within the womb. And once again, the abnormal overgrowth that I have been most fascinated about within my own medical astrology history has been endometriosis, which has to do with the growth of the endometrial lining outside of the actual uterus. The endometrial lining is what gets shed monthly within the context of menstruation. And when a woman is having endometriosis, that lining is growing outside of the specific container of the uterus. And as a result of that, one of the most common responses of the medical community today is either to put that woman on birth control so that she is no longer having a menstrual cycle, and therefore the effects and the symptoms of the endometriosis can be vastly diminished. But another more drastic thing that has been going on within medicine is this desire or this impulse towards suggesting a hysterectomy, which is the surgical removal of the uterus entirely. And why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because that's just what the Venus-Pluto can oftentimes be associated with. Now, if we apply the piece that I said earlier about any sign or any planet in a sign that is afflicted by another planet is going to represent an affliction to the part of that body that that sign signifies. Once again, we have Venus in Cancer, and we know that Cancer is having to do with the womb. Cancer is having to do with the stomach, the three parts of the stomach in general. And Cancer is also having to do with the breasts. And Cancer is only having to do with the breasts because of the ways in which Cancer as a principle is representing how we are nurtured within this lifetime. So the Venus in Cancer in a square relationship with Pluto can also be re-corroborating some of the intense digestive health issues that we spoke about earlier. And since we know that Pluto also has to do with abnormal growth, this is something that we see sometimes within the charts of people who are having polyps that are developing within their digestive tract, and also other abnormal overgrowths within the digestive system. One of them is SIBO. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is something that I associate with Moon Pluto. Even though she doesn't have Moon Pluto, she does have the Venus-Pluto combination with the Venus in the domicile of the Moon, which can also denote that same thing. That is what these things mean from a universal perspective. However, if we tune into the fact that she is specifically here to talk about love, then the Venus-Pluto is something that we oftentimes find within the charts of people who are undergoing intensity within their love life. Intensity is a very nice PG-13 Pluto word. However, Venus Pluto, in the same way as it can feel like a violation within my womb, when I have Venus Pluto showing up within my birth chart, Venus Pluto can also feel like a violation of my heart, or a betrayal of my heart, or some trauma that I undergo from a love perspective, because Venus and Pluto is the combination that we associate with the story of the rape of Persephone. Therefore, her Venus Pluto within this chart or within this lifetime is saying that she is somebody who has the ability to go both gamuts as far as love is concerned. She is somebody who can be completely turned on and completely in pursuit of love, and that is something that can overwhelm her. So what we want to say to her as advice is to step away from that part of yourself that is overly eager, or that is overly driven from a carnal level, or that's just overly impulsive from any perspective as far as your love life is concerned. Because whenever we have Pluto afflicting anything within our charts, it comes with this story of survival. So when we have Venus Pluto, we might rush into the hands of love as if our very life depended on it. So there's this urgency, or there's this excessive force that's manifesting behind the desire to love and be loved, which can be very overwhelming, which can cause her to go beyond or to circumvent her larger wisdom process within her as a means of manifesting love. However, if you've done that 1 time, 2 times, 10 times, 20 times, the universe is saying that there is also a wisdom that's occurring within you that says that rushing into those love circumstances has not proven well for me in the past. So next time, instead of running, I will walk. And instead of walking, I will just stand and hold space, and stand and be still, and stand and be silent. And instead of being in such a deep survival mode pursuit of that which I desire from the perspective of love, I'm going to stand within the truth of who I am and everything that I desire for myself, and I'm going to allow someone to gravitate towards me as a result of me holding true to my inviolable, I don't even know if that's how you say that word, but I will allow that person to be gravitated towards me as a result of my unalterable sense of self. Very often when we have the Venus Pluto within our chart, we allow ourselves to be altered or shifted or changed as a result of the people coming into our lives. And then when those people come into our lives and they mess things up, we find ourselves in a situation where we feel offended or violated or betrayed. But the universe is saying within the context of this chart that you have attracted a particular type of love experience consistently within your experience. And now it's time for you to use the wisdom of that and use the wisdom of that which has been disappointing to you from a love perspective. I also note that she has the wide quincunx between the Venus and the Neptune, and Venus and Neptune is a combination of disappointment and love. So use the wisdom that you've been given as a result of the sort of love experiences that you've been through in the past, and allow yourself to cultivate a list of criteria that specifically outlines the sorts of love that you actually do want, because you are clear on the ways in which love has manifested in your past in a way that has not been beneficial to you, whether that's been because you are coming from an alcoholic environment, whether that is because the father or there was alcoholism within your home and you thought that you were going to run away from that, and then you found yourself with an alcoholic or with a partner who also has addictive tendencies, or a partner who is also lying and being deceptive, or a partner who is bringing you trauma into your life, or a partner who is bringing you violence into your life, which is some of the things that we see manifesting within your chart. Regardless of what that story is specifically, you already know all of the criteria of what you don't want. And one of the best things, or one of the most amazing parts about knowing what we don't want, is that when you turn your head in the opposite direction, you all of a sudden start to realize the things that you do want. And so the universe is saying, compile that list of what hasn't worked for you in the past, because that list will give you the exact information regarding what will work for you and regarding what does work for you within this lifetime. Our charts hold the stories of what will occur within our lives at least 1 time. because of the momentum that we bring to life, we oftentimes end up repeating those stories again and again and again and again. However, your chart isn't here to damn you. Your chart is here to give you an index of what will occur within your life at least one time within this lifetime. And after that event has occurred, it is within your hands to choose not to repeat that story again. So this is the promise that all of us have from an astrological perspective, and this is the wisdom that the universe is giving to you now from the perspective of your natal chart. All right, so you can unmute yourself again, and you could just tell us how that landed for you. You can take about 5 minutes to do that. You can tell us what things felt really accurate to you, what things didn't feel accurate at all, so that we can learn from your experience.
It was excellent. Thank you so much. Everything was correct. The gut is definitely, and the stomach definitely is an issue. When I'm upset, it triggers usually stomach issues and gut issues, intestines. So the father figure, he was a soldier, so he was quite strict. At home, we were very scared. And then the husband issues is correct. It's all correct. Everything is correct. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Can I ask you about the, is there also a womb health story? Because I did speak a lot about the endometriosis, just because that's my personal fascination in astrology at the moment. So is there also a womb health story that manifested for you?
I just started menopause a year ago. So I'm hoping I will not get any womb issues. I had breast cancer issue. They take piece, and they did look at it, and it wasn't anything to worry about. But I will have a look the womb issue as well, because it's always good to check, really.
Exactly. And also, I just want to let you know, and this is something I always let people know, that at this point in your life, you were born in 1973, the same year that my country was born. So at this point in your life, anything that I'm saying to you about your chart are things that I'm projecting into the past, not necessarily things that I'm projecting into the future, because that is kind of my own optimism within astrology, but it also tends to be truthful. At the point at which you come to a reading with an astrologer, anything that astrologer is going to say to you is something that they're saying retrospectively. So if you haven't had that issue that I described through the Venus Pluto, then that's not going to manifest within your lifetime, because at this point it would have already occurred. Does that make sense?
Excellent. Yes. Thank you. Yeah,
awesome.
It does. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we can take her out of the room. Bring me back up on the screen, full screen, please. All right, everybody. So that is reading number 1. Thank you all so much for being here. At the moment, there's about 202 people who are currently logged in. Thank you so much for logging in live, especially those of you who are logged in on Twitter. If you don't currently follow me on Twitter, please do take a moment and do so. We have the little Twitter bird. My handle on Twitter is Oraculos Astro, and over there, that's where I give you updates about when we're coming out with this sort of content, but that's also where I'm going to be giving you our daily astrology tidbits. So if you want to catch my daily astrology advice for the astrology of the day every day, then do make sure to follow us over on Oraculos Astro at Twitter. I would love to be in conversation with you all over there. It's a wonderful platform to be in conversation in general. Did we get any questions from this chart, from this reading, Anna, before I go on to the next one? You could tell me at the end. We could move on to the...
Okay.
Yeah, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to dive into the next reading, but let me just give you a commercial break. As you all know, our Natal Astrology Intensive is coming up this August 4th through August 10th. This is how I practice natal astrology. And for me, once again, this type of astrology is far more interesting than looking at the chart of Britney Spears and saying what's going to happen in Britney Spears' life, because for me, that isn't really a dynamic display of astrology. This that we're doing here today is astrology in action. Having the chart of someone who you've never met before and being able to trust your astrology enough to know that what's going to come out of your mouth is going to at least strike a chord of truth within that person's life, because your astrological skills that you're drawing from are robust in that way. So if you all want to practice astrology in this way and study astrology in this way, then by all means sign up for our upcoming Natal Astrology Intensive, which begins this August 4th through August 10th, 2024, in which I'm going to be teaching you everything that I just did in this chart. I'm going to be teaching you in that intensive, from a medical astrology perspective, to a financial astrology perspective, to a familial astrology perspective, to a romance astrology perspective. Everything that you could possibly want to know based on what I do, I'll be teaching you in our upcoming Natal Astrology Intensive. Wonderful. Now let's move on. So give me the chart information. How about we go with, you have a guy on that list as well. Yes?
Yes.
Let's go with the guy, just to shake things up a bit, because one of the things that we've gotten a complaint about at Oraculos is that we don't do enough men's charts. And I kind of feel that way as well. I think one of the reasons why women's health issues and women's reproductive issues has been one of the central parts of my own astrological practice is because the majority of my astrological clients have been women in general. So, go figure. But I really would like to take a look at more men's charts in astrology. And as a matter of fact, we are currently conducting a medical astrology research project here at the Oraculos School of Astrology. Don't bring it up just yet. Oh, okay. We're currently facilitating a medical astrology research project here at the Oraculos School of Astrology in preparation for the publication of my third book. My third book is going to be out this December 2024, and it's the beginning book in our natal astrology series. As you all know, for me, natal astrology begins with an assessment of the first house, and traditionally speaking, medical astrology also begins with an assessment of the first house. Therefore, the first book in our two-part natal astrology series is going to be on medical astrology. And one of the things that we need are charts. At the moment, we already have hundreds of charts that we've collected from all corners of the internet over my entire astrological practice. But we really would like more charts. So if you have a medical astrology issue or just a chronic health concern, then please do email us at hello@oraculosastrology.com. At the moment, we're going for things that are a little bit more robust and a little bit more easily identifiable, astrologically speaking. So if you or if somebody you know has a very real and a very robust medical health condition, then please do email us at hello@oraculosastrology.com. I'm also going to bring up the criteria for our medical astrology research project on the screen so that you all could see the various things that we're looking for. We're looking for accurate birth data, date of birth, time of birth, location of birth, and gender of birth. Your specific medical diagnosis or diagnoses. The other thing that we need is going to be a brief medical history outlining any ongoing health concerns and circumstances surrounding them. So do you have a medical condition based on an accident? Or do you have a medical condition because that runs in your family? Or do you have a medical condition because it's congenital, meaning you were born with it? Please, if you have this information and you want to be a part of our upcoming medical astrology research, some of which, not the majority of which, but some of which will make its way into my next book, the third volume of my Oraculos Complete Astrology series, which is going to come out this December 2024, then please do email us this information at hello@oraculosastrology.com. All right. Okay, so let us move on to the next chart. Did I already say that I love the fact that we're getting more men's charts in general? We only yesterday got a chart of a guy who has had testicular cancer, and it shows up profoundly within his chart, and that chart is going to make its way into our medical astrology book. So if you are somebody who has any sort of male reproductive health issues whatsoever, or you know somebody who has male reproductive health issues, please do send those in, because at the moment we're drowning in endometriosis, adenomyosis, dysmenorrhea, menorrhagia, fibroids, polycystic ovarian syndrome. We have every single female reproductive health issue that exists in the entire universe. We would like to get some more male reproductive health issues within our medical astrology studies. Now, moving on to number 2. Anna, hit me.
February 28, 1974, 1:15 p.m., Santiago de Chile.
Santiago, Chile. Yofi Matsuyan, a male, yes?
Male, gay.
One. Okay, good. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I do.
Okay, awesome. Can you see the chart on the screen though?
Yes.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. I don't know what it is today about these charts with the luminaries and the Neptune. In the other chart, we had almost the exact aspect of Moon Neptune, and in this chart, we have the Sun Neptune within your natal chart, which is descriptive of the man within your lived experience. And I have a lot to, just looking at it, there's a lot that's already coming up within my mind. But anyway, I will let you talk us through it. How are you?
Hello, Mychal.
Hi,
Very
how are
well.
you?
Very, very well, and you?
Awesome, I'm doing great.
Well, thanks for putting me up on the line. I will give you the freedom to choose how you want to read my chart.
Well, actually, no, you give me. I mean, there are some things that are burning on the tip of my tongue that I already want to say. However, I will allow you to tell me the thing that I can do that. I have no problem doing that at all. That's kind of like my shtick in life in general. But also, if you have a specific issue that you would like for me to specifically speak about or address within your chart, we can do that as well.
Well, as the lady before, I would like you to concentrate on one house. I would like to talk about my 10th house.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Great. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So let's dive into it. So we can remute so then I can dive in. And then you have me on a 20-minute timer?
Yes.
All right, put me on.
Give you a 10-minute.
Give me, yeah, so put me on the timer. You know, there's a broadcast that we do on Mondays, which is our tarot broadcast. And this last Monday, it went ridiculously long. In that broadcast, I give you all of your tarot information for the week ahead. You can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. And if you haven't already subscribed to us on YouTube, please do so that YouTube can pay us our coin, because it's about time we started getting paid some real shmoney from YouTube. Also, if you're currently listening to this broadcast, wherever in the world you are, please do like this video. Take a moment, go down below. I will also take a moment and Reiki myself while you do that, because the more likes these videos get, the more the algorithm pushes these videos out to a more wider viewership. So 5 seconds, go down below. Please like this video. I'm kind of begging, but I'm also very grateful to you for your support and service. Yofi Matsuyan. Now let's dive into this chart. For those of you listening on Spotify, this guy's information is February 28th, 1974 at 1:15 p.m. in Santiago, Chile. And that is it. And it's a male chart. Someone once asked me the other day why I still require or ask for gender within the context of me giving a reading. And I have a lot to say about that, particularly because I have a lot to say about that. I don't know if right now is the right time to go into that. So let's move on from that topic. But hopefully, if we have time at the end, I'll come back to it. All right. So within his chart, he is specifically here asking about career. Now, There are some other things going on within this chart that we could have spoken about. Like, for example, the fact that his moon is at 26 degrees Taurus, which is definitely the degree of Algol, which is going to talk about his siblings. It's also going to talk about his mother. And there are things we could say about that as well. But moving on from that, maybe I'll still say it later on. From the perspective of career, from a traditional astrology perspective, we would take a look at the ruler of the 10th house, aspects to the ruler of the 10th house, and planets in the 10th house. There's this thought within certain astrological circles that we should take a look at the sign on your 10th house cusp, which for me is knocking futs. Because if we take a look at the sign on your 10th house cusp as being somehow significant about the job that you're going to do within this lifetime, then that means every single person on this planet, they are only falling into 12 potential job categories. WTF? You know, it's kind of strange. So at Oraculos, we do not look at the sign on the cusp of the 10th house. We really don't look at the sign of anything, truth be told, outside of the context of medical astrology. We really don't. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because the protocol for what we do is we would look at the ruler of the 10th house, planets in the 10th house, aspects to the ruler of the 10th house as being significant about how the job is going to manifest within a lifetime. Now, on the topic of saying that, what I think is also very important as far as vocational astrology is concerned is that who you are vocationally isn't just going to be based on your 10th house. Who you are vocationally is going to be based on who you are in life. Creative people gravitate towards creative ideas, and they gravitate towards creative careers, whether or not they have a creative planet in their 10th house. Martial people gravitate towards martial careers. They gravitate towards martial vocations based on who they are as people, whether or not they have Mars in their 10th house. You understand? So when we are doing vocational astrology, we have to jump off the high horse of talking about the 10th house as if it's the be-all and the end-all, and we have to develop a more comprehensive way of understanding how that person is manifesting within this lifetime in general. So taking a look at this chart, we see that the ruler of his 10th house is Saturn at 27 degrees of Gemini, 47 minutes stationing. Saturn doesn't like to be in Gemini. Saturn doesn't like to be in Sagittarius. Saturn doesn't like to be in Pisces. The only mutable sign that Saturn actually likes to be in is Virgo. And the reason for that is because Saturn is a melancholic, cold, and dry planet, and Virgo is a melancholic, cold, and dry sign. And I speak all about this somewhere floating around on YouTube. The video is called Why Does Saturn Only Like Being in Virgo? Or something like that. And so Saturn doesn't really like being in a mutable sign. Now, in general, as you all know, I'm not really assigned to the zodiac person. However, I have a lot to say about when a person has Saturn in a mutable sign. Because Saturn is meant to be our anchor within this lifetime. Saturn is meant to be how we ground ourselves, how we find ourselves, how we establish our divine presence on this earth. These are the things that we expect to find from Saturn, a sense of our own solidity on this planet. Therefore, when we have our Saturn mutable, that isn't in harmony with the role that Saturn is meant to play within our lives, particularly when Saturn is in any other mutable sign other than Virgo. Saturn in Gemini, for example, is going to represent a native who is split in terms of his ability to completely consolidate his efforts in any specific career trajectory. And the reason why we say that is because the mutable Saturn is the Saturn who struggles to create a sense of genuine stability within his experience. And so, on the one hand, this is representing multiple career trajectories within this person's life. And that can sometimes be a source of anxiety as well, because when I have multiple career trajectories, then any one of them could potentially be the career. And then I get stuck within a cycle of analysis paralysis, where it feels as if I have so many options available to me, I don't actually know which of those options I'm going to choose. This is very much a 7 of Cups sort of thing. We know that the Seven of Cups, from a Kabbalistic tarot perspective, is signifying Venus in Scorpio. And in that card, the Seven of Cups, we have a sense that that person is surrounded by so many options that it's difficult for that person to consolidate themselves around any specific option or to choose to go down any specific path. So in general, this could be an issue that he finds himself faced with in this lifetime, the issue of being foundationally split within himself. He also has Jupiter in a trine relationship to this Saturn, which is lovely because having the Jupiter trine the Saturn is saying that there's something within the universe that is supportive of the part of him that wants to have many potential career trajectories. The Jupiter Saturn is also giving him more new and creative ideas regarding what he can be doing, and it's also giving him a lot of optimism surrounding what he can potentially be doing in this lifetime from a career perspective. So we love that. However, the trine from Jupiter isn't sufficient to really alter or augment some of the issues that we see occurring with the Saturn. We note within this chart that he also has Saturn in the conjunction with the South Node. He has Saturn in the conjunction with the South Node in his second house of money. And this is a statement in itself because according to the ancients, that's not true. According to me, any house that you have Saturn in is going to be a house where you find yourself working out the greatest amount of personal karma within this lifetime. If we have Saturn in the first house, the greatest amount of personal karma we find ourselves dealing with is the situation of our physical body, our physical health, our physical well-being in this lifetime becomes our major karmic burden, our major challenge in this lifetime. Saturn in the second house, your major karmic burden, your major challenge in this lifetime becomes money. And the reason why we say it becomes money is because Saturn is going to represent the rule of cosmic law wherever we find that Saturn within our birth charts. And therefore, when we find ourselves undergoing our first Saturn return, the crisis signified by that Saturn return is going to be directly related to the house within which our Saturn is present, natally speaking. So around the time of his first Saturn return, the major crisis that he had to navigate at that time was a crisis of money. It was a money problem he had at his first Saturn return. And since the Saturn is specifically ruling his career, it was the intersection between money and his career that he found himself navigating within this lifetime. Now, that is the Saturn by itself in the second house, showing that money is going to be a major thing or a major challenge for him within this lifetime. And he was born in 1974, the same year as my mother, which means that at this point in his life, he's already figured out how to navigate himself surrounding his monetary challenges. One of the beautiful things about natal astrology is that in a natal astrological practice, you have your entire lifetime to figure that shit out. You have your entire lifetime to figure out how you're going to navigate the challenges that are showing up for you natally speaking. Whereas in horary astrology, we don't have so long to navigate how things are showing up for us. Also, shameless plug, we have our upcoming horary astrology intensive, which is going to be this August 11th, 2024. You can join us for our horary intensive, in which I'll be taking you through everything that I've written about in my book. I was going to say Mastering Horary Astrology, because it was supposed to be called Mastering Horary Astrology, when in fact the name of it is Horary Astrology and the Natal Promise, because I'm a very romantic person, and that's a very romantic name. So please do purchase yourself a copy of the book, but also sign up for our upcoming Horary Astrology Intensive, which begins this August 11th, 2024. I can't wait to see you there. Now, coming back to his chart, we have our entire lives to figure out the challenges that face us. So fine, he has a challenging monetary story because he has Saturn in the second house and a sign that the Saturn doesn't like to be in. Fine, he has a challenging financial story because he has the South Node in the second house, and the ancients do tell us that any house the South Node is in, I'm going to tell you what the ancients say. Don't shoot the messenger because this isn't my own language. The ancients say that any house that the South Node is in, actually, let me tone that down a bit because I don't want to get canceled in this year, 2024. The ancients say that any house the South Node is in is going to be a house where we have a little bit of problems manifesting in our lives. And this is definitely the truth. When we have the South Node in the second house, we find ourselves navigating issues surrounding our ability to keep and consolidate our monies. Regardless of how rich you might be, you will always feel as if there's a hole within your pocket. So that is the South Node in the second house. So he has the Saturn in the second house, which is a little bit of a problem. He has the South Node in the second house, which is a little bit of a problem. He has the mutable Saturn representing the multitude and the plethora of careers that he can potentially do within this lifetime, which can be paralyzing to a person to have so many options. He also has the Saturn in the conjunction with that South Node, which is also a big problem because, as you all know, as courting to me, as courting is something that I think we had some cousins or something who lived in Jamaica and grew up in Jamaica. As you all know, my family is from the Bahamas and from Jamaica, and our Jamaican side of the family, they say as courting, as opposed to according, as courting. So as courting, to me, having the ruler of my 10th house in the conjunction with the South Node is going to signify that there feels as if my career is being flushed down the toilet. Now, why do we say the career is being flushed down the toilet? Because as according to me, there are specific toilet bowls that exist within our charts from an astrological perspective. And I talk all about them in my book, Mastering Traditional Astrology, A Depth of Beginning in the Celestial Art, all about the toilet bowls within our chart. The South Node is a toilet bowl. The 12th house is a toilet bowl. Neptune is a toilet bowl. The first square to the South Node within our chart is also a toilet bowl. That one is called the Southern Bending. All of these are things where if we have a planet in those places or conjunct those points, is representing a source of loss within our lives, where it could feel very difficult to consolidate or maintain the shape of that which we desire. So if what we desire is the shape of a solid and a consolidated career, then having my career conjunct the South Node can represent a complete loss or a fading away of that which I desire as far as my career is concerned. Or maybe I begin to make some headways as far as my career is concerned, and then as I build my sandcastle of a career up, I find that sandcastle of my career completely fading away once more. So this could be a major karmic problem that he finds himself manifesting within this lifetime, the building up of a career as well as the constant fading away of the careers within his lifetime, which leaves him with the sense of disappointment within his life as far as the topic of his career is concerned. Now, what I'm doing is I'm laying out the lay of the land so that we can figure out how to help this person. One of the problems with modern astrology is that in modern astrology, everything is good. Everything is positive. There is nothing wrong in modern astrology. You're perfect. Your mother was perfect. Your child is perfect. Your father was perfect. Even if your father was a belligerent, violent alcoholic, your father was perfect. Your grandmother is perfect. Even if your grandmother abused your mother, your grandmother is perfect. Because in modern astrology, everything tends to be perfect because modern astrology does not teach us how to speak concretely, which is a big problem. Because today we find ourselves in a version of astrology in which everybody can tell you about your personality. Your sun is your personality, your moon is your personality, your ascendant is your personality, your north node is your personality, your south, everything is your personality within astrology in 2024, which is a big problem. Because as we look back at astrology historically, even as we look back at astrology in the 1960s, even as we look back at astrology, I dare say in the 1970s, there was this very robust intentionality surrounding the astrology as a means of it being able to speak about the concrete realities within people's lives. And regardless of how spiritually evolved your astrological practice is, there are some things within our lives that suck. And it's important for us as astrologers to be able to describe truthfully, confidently, the things that suck, so that we can help those people more adequately address those problems within their lives. But if you as an astrologer can tell one suckedness from the next suckedness, then the reality is that you are missing a fundamental tool that allows you to be more helpful within the lives of the people who you serve. And that's what astrology should be about, us helping people navigate the things that they face, not just a lifetime full of blessings, but also a lifetime of some other things that don't actually feel like blessings within this lifetime. And we as astrologers are meant to be able to identify those things from an astrological perspective. Now, going back to his chart and talking about the second house, we've spoken about the second house and the challenges that it denotes from a financial perspective. Now, if we go and specifically talk about the 10th house and how that's showing up within his life, we note, first of all, that he has the sun within the 10th. Having the sun within the 10th is pretty much the equivalent of having the ruler of my huha, of having the ruler of my ascendant in the 10th house. If I have the ruler of my ascendant in the 10th house, it oftentimes is denoting that I am somebody who is powerfully driven by my career, and my career is the singular source of importance within my life. So much of who I am constellates surrounding my career identity, which is one part of the statement. As you all know, as according to me, good astrology isn't just making the first statement. Good astrology is being able to question that statement and say why. So if you say to somebody that based on your chart, your career is a very big deal for you, the next question must naturally be why. And that why is where the actual astrology takes place. Because in answering that question why, we start to look at the chart in a more penetrating way, and we gather more details and we gather more information. So within his chart, we see that the sun is in his 10th house, which is signifying that the career is a major source around which his efforts within this lifetime are constellating. The question that I ask when I take a look at that is why? Why should my career be such a big deal for me? Now, truthfully, as I look at it, I can't really identify why, but I'm going to slow myself down and try to tap into a stream that actually allows us to discuss why this is within his chart. I don't mean to be that person, but I kind of am that person. In life in general, a lot of the issues that we find ourselves facing are issues that are directly proportionate to things that were first planted within our family story. So even though I would like to feel as if, and I think all of us would like to feel as if we live a life of a certain amount of autonomy where our family story isn't such a big overarching deal for us, at the same time, more often than not, the circumstances that unfold within our family are circumstances that directly impact our own decision-making process within this lifetime. We note within his chart that the sun is ruling his 4th house of the father and the family, which can say to us that a very big drive for him in terms of him pursuing the specific career that he's chosen to pursue is in fact his father and his family within this lifetime. Potentially, his career is something that was greatly influenced by the impact or the impetus of his father within this lifetime. So that is probably a major driving force for him in terms of the career that he finds himself manifesting. Now, if we had to try to describe that career a bit, we would describe that career not necessarily based on planets in the 10th house, but based on tight aspects within his chart. For me, the tight aspects that he has within his chart are clearly going to be the Mercury-Mars. Mercury-Mars is something that we find within the charts of somebody who has a powerful, fast, heated mind. And that's why sometimes when people have Mercury Mars, they do good on the debate team, or they do good in terms of law, or they do good in terms of journalism, because these are people who know how to carry the fire that they hold within their mind, and they know how to articulate that fire in terms of words, whether that's in debating, whether that's in the legal industry, whether that's in the communication industry. All of these things are things that we find with Mercury and Mars. And if these aren't things that he has already been doing within his lifetime, then these are areas within his life that he might choose to consider as a means of assisting him within his specific career pursuits. Another thing that we see going on within his chart is that by declination, he's having the Sun-Mercury combination by declination. Now, even though Ibn Ezra, when he made this statement, he wasn't referring to parallels and contraparallels, we're going to pretend as if he was. Ibn Ezra says that whenever we have any direct, tight aspect relationship between the Sun and Mercury, as a matter of fact, he says whenever we have a conjunction between the Sun and Mercury, this is manifesting as if there are two Mercuries within the sky. And so this makes this person very cerebral, which is lovely. If he's somebody working in the sciences, if he's somebody working in technology, It makes him exceptionally cerebral and exceptionally able to do things that require a strategic mind and to do things that require problem solving. So this could also be something that he's gravitating to or towards within his lifetime. Whatever career field he finds himself in, this is going to be, or these are going to be skills that he can apply within that field. One of the places where he could do that is human resources, working in HR, for example, because HR is all about hearing the people's problems around you. And it's also all about knowing how to help those people navigate those problems in a constructive and a creative way. So this is another thing that we find with the Mercury and the Sun combination. It makes him very cerebral. And as a result of that, he can lean even more deeply into things that require problem solving or puzzle solving, which is a very mercurial thing. And that's something that he can take into any career that he is doing because he has a mind that knows how to strategize and calculate and make things make sense, basically. So that's the Mercury-Mars combination. Finally, we also see that he has Jupiter conjunct his midheaven. Within Uranian astrology, the midheaven is specifically representing the self. Within traditional astrology, the ascendant is representing the self. Both of these things are true and accurate. And so as to not spend more time talking about that now, I will direct you to my book, Mastering Traditional Astrology, which, if you're in the United States of America, you can purchase yourself a signed copy. And by signed, I mean paragraphs of signing. I never sweat so much in my life. I sat down in that warehouse and I signed over 80 copies of the book with a whole paragraph in each book. So please, if you want to read my specific paragraph, then please go and purchase a copy of Mastering Traditional Astrology from our website by visiting oraculosastrology.com/shop. So the point of all of that is that in that book, I spoke about why the ascendant is the self and why the midheaven is also the self. When we have Jupiter in a conjunction with our midheaven, it causes us ourselves to be Jupiterian, which is lovely. This can say that this native is a very optimistic person. He's somebody who is always coming up with grand new ideas or grand new speculations. He's somebody who just knows that if life knocks him down, he's going to get back up. So as a result of that, he might even be somebody who's overly optimistic because sometimes life knocks you down and it says, hey, stay down. No need to get back up right now. But as a result of the Jupiterian part of himself, he might be overly optimistic. And he might be overly optimistic in terms of things having to do with his career. And as a result of that level of over-optimism regarding things having to do with his career, he might be finding himself taking risks within his career that aren't necessarily the best risks in the world to take. And the reason why I say risks is because he's having the ruler of the 8th house be the Jupiter, and the Jupiter is conjunct the 10th house cusp, representing a career that directly is involving a more riskier way of life or a more riskier way to live. And so as a result of that, some of the career jumps and some of the career decisions that he might be making may not necessarily be founded or grounded in the most rational approach in the world. So that's something that we see within this chart as a result of the Jupiter being there as well. However, if we were to describe Jupiterian careers, one Jupiter career, and I don't even know if I think this is a Jupiter career, but it's a career that we could associate with Jupiter, would be working in the financial sector or working in the financial industry in general. We could also say that there's a financial industry implication within this because Jupiter is ruling the 8th house of other people's money, and it's in the 10th house, which can be a signification of the fact that either other people are investing their money into my career, or I'm working in a career that directly is impacting other people's money. One of those two things are going to be the direction that we go in terms of this Jupiterian story. Now, the other thing that we see within his chart, well, those are the main things. We see the Sun, we see the Mercury, we see the Mars, we see the Mercury, and we've spoken about how those things are manifesting. If we had to tell him what to do in order to balance or better navigate some of the career issues that he finds himself navigating within this lifetime, we would want for him to essentially choose one thing. Now, the reason why I say that is because the Saturn, as we know, is mutable, and that is holding its fair share of difficulties and its fair share of problems. But we also have the Sun mutable in a square relationship with the Neptune. And not only is this speaking about his father specifically, since the Sun is the ruler of his fourth house, therefore the Sun Neptune has to do with disappointment that I associate with my father. Daddy wasn't there, or if daddy was there in a disappointing way. Daddy didn't actually have the ability to support me in the way that I needed to be supported. And as a result of that, I feel this paternal wound within my life because I don't really get, or I haven't really received, the most robust understanding of how to show up as a man within my life in terms of my paternal influence. And sometimes when the father influence is missing within the charts of men, or when it's disappointing within the charts of men, that can cause the life of that person to become rudderless. And I say this because within the Kabbalistic Tarot, we know that the first card is the Fool card. The second card is the Magus, or the Magus of power. The third card is the Daughter of the Silver Star, which is the High Priestess. The fourth card is the Empress, otherwise known as the daughter of the Great Ones in the Kabbalistic Tarot. And the fourth card in the Kabbalistic Tarot, or the next card, is going to be, what is it? The Emperor, whose esoteric name is Sun within the morning, chief amongst the mighty. The Emperor is representing the paternal force within our lives, and therefore the Emperor is representing a major way in which we get a sense of direction about how to show up within this lifetime in general. And when the Emperor within our charts, i.e., when the father within my chart has been Neptuned, then it can make me feel at a fundamental level as a man myself, as if I'm not necessarily sure how to organize my efforts in this lifetime in order for those efforts to have a great level of specificity or clarity and focus. And therefore, I might find myself living out at sea more often than not. And when I say living out at sea, I mean, I might find myself not knowing which way to go or how to go or when to go or why to go as a result of this specific paternal influence being a dissolving factor within my life. When that paternal influence dissolves, it also causes me myself to feel as if I'm in a constant state of dissolution. And if I'm in a constant state of dissolution, it's difficult for me to figure out how to galvanize myself and how to bring together my practiced powers and how to stretch them out in a direction that has a very clear sense of specificity. That is what the Sun Neptune is denoting within his chart. Finally, in terms of his own monetary story, we find that the Mercury is representing his personal finances within this lifetime. And Mercury is at 1 degree Pisces, 49 minutes retrograde. Period. And we know that Pisces is the sign of Mercury's detriment as well as fall. And Mercury is ruling his, which house? Mercury is ruling his second house of personal finances. So this is further saying to us that there's something inbuilt into the career that he's doing, which just isn't good for his money in general, which is crazy because one would imagine that my career would be the exact thing that benefits my money is. But here, this is saying that the career that he gravitates to, or the careers that he has gravitated towards historically, are careers that have given him far more financial hardship than they've given him financial freedom. Furthermore, we find that Mercury is in a square relationship with Mars, and Mars within this chart is ruling the Mars within this chart is ruling the seventh house of his romantic partnerships. And this could be an indication that his money is oftentimes in problems, or his money is oftentimes violated by his romantic partnerships. His romantic partnerships are harsh against his money. His money is oftentimes being burnt up by his romantic partners. And that can be another issue that he needs to tighten up on within his life. Knowing how to create a greater sense of financial difference, or knowing how to create a greater sense of financial clarity between your personal income and the personal income of your financial partners, or rather your romantic partners, and making sure that they aren't having the ability to debilitate your funds in the ways that they probably have debilitated your funds historically. So that's one of the things we see with the Mercury in the square relationship with Mars. The other thing that we see with the Mercury square Mars is that Mars is ruling his 11th house. The 11th house, as we know, is the house of friendships, which says to us that his friends are also debilitating his personal assets, and his friends are also debilitating his personal monies. Maybe since he's such a Jupiterian person, remember I said in Uranian astrology, the midheaven is corresponding with the self. Therefore, he has Jupiter conjunct his midheaven. Therefore, he himself may feel as if he's Santa Claus. When you feel as if you're Santa Claus and you go ho, ho, ho around everybody's life, then everybody feels as if you are going to be overly generous and as if you have something to provide them or give them, regardless of their ability to pay you back. So this over generous part of him could also be a very big part of the issue in terms of his monetary relationship, even with his friends. Because when we take a look at this chart, we see that the Mercury square the Mars says that probably lending money to your friends may not necessarily be the best thing in the world for you within this lifetime. We also see the Mercury in the square relationship with the Mars ruling his 12th house as well within the context of Regiomontanus. I only use Regiomontanus. I don't know how to do anything else. I don't want to know how to do anything else because Regiomontanus works within the context of the astrology that I practice and the astrology that my students replicate every single day of their lives at the Oraculos School of Astrology. I'm not saying that Regiomontanus is the only house system because I think that's a very stupid thing to say, but I'm saying that Regiomontanus works very well within the context of practicing 17th century astrology. So he has the Mercury in the square relationship with the Mars ruling his 12th house, which is saying, if you watch that video that Joe posted yesterday on our YouTube channel, it's saying that his monies and his relationship with his monies is also a part of his own self-undoing. So now we have a much more fuller and a much more robust understanding of who this person is within his lifetime, how he's navigating his own financial obligation to himself within this lifetime. We even see the Venus ruling his first house, therefore representing himself in an opposition relationship with the part of fortune, which is further corroborating for us this sense of internal warfare between himself and what he's doing within this lifetime monetarily. So we have a very good understanding from an astrological perspective, or at least from my astrological perspective, how things are showing up within his life. So now that we have that understanding, we can better assist him and say, hey, your partners haven't been the best in the world for you. Your romantic partners haven't been the best in the world for you as far as your career is as far as your money is concerned. And therefore, you might feel as if your career is the problem, but what you're actually doing with the money that you gain from your career could be the problem. How you're using your personal funds to line the pockets of your marital partners or of your romantic partners is actually a very big problem within your life. And that problem could lead to disappointment. We have the Neptune in the 7th house. Neptune in the 7th house is something that occurs whenever a person is having an idealistic version of what love is, and it causes them to not really see love as it's manifesting within their lives. Venus is the karka of the 7th house. Venus is the karka of the 7th house, meaning that Venus is the vehicle of the 7th house. Therefore, if we have a planet that is terrestrially placed within our 7th house, we can also think about that planet being in a direct conjunction with our natal Venus. And Neptune Venus, or rather Venus Neptune, is the combination of disappointment within love. And his chart is saying that one of the places within which his love life might be disappointed is the intersection between his lovers and his personal finances. So we would say to him, hey, make a very clear mark between your lovers and your finances, and you have to prevent yourself from being overly generous, because you might feel as if you're broke because you are overly generous or because of your career, when in fact your real financial issues are rooted within your overgenerosity and you not knowing how to tell yourself no or how to tell other people no when they come to you expecting a handout. So that is what we see with the Mercury and the Mars as a combination. Next, with the Sun within the 10th house representing his father, we want to say to him, hey, Maybe you should choose a career path that doesn't have anything to do with your family. And maybe you should choose a career path that has no influence or no impact of your father upon it. Because within your chart, your dad is Sun Neptune. And having your dad as Sun Neptune says that he didn't really show up in your life in a way that manifested as the best sort of example in general, or that manifested as the most robust or the most reliable example in general. And your own understanding of what it meant to be within your family circle manifested in a way that brought you a very real sense of crisis. This is something that we also see within his chart as a result of his moon being conjunct Algol. Algol is the demon star. Algol is the Medusa's head star. Algol isn't the best star in the whole wide world. And when we have the moon in a conjunction with Algol, it says to us that our family is something that caused us to lose our head. It's also saying to us specifically that our mother is someone who caused us to lose our head, since the moon is the universal significator of the mother. But it is saying in general, the family is something that caused you to lose your head. And insofar as you're still making decisions that are rooted in the impact that your family had on your life, chances are you're not actually going to feel the sort of liberation that you should feel in terms of your career, because even those career decisions are still carrying the essence of the family that you've known. He also has the moon in a quincunx relationship with the Uranus. Moon quincunx Uranus is speaking about the unreliability of the family as a unit, but it's also speaking about the specific unreliability or the erraticness of the mother as a specific individual within the lifetime of the person. And so this is manifesting its fair share of problems within your life as far as the maternal influence is concerned, but it's also corroborating this idea that we stated earlier as a result of the Sun Neptune. It's corroborating this idea that even from a maternal level, the mother didn't really have the ability to show up in a very robust way. And any way that the mother showed up within your life was a way that was very erratic, it was very volatile, and it didn't really give you the clearest sense of coming from a family container that had the ability to hold you or that had the ability to stabilize your own dreams and ambitions. So this chart is saying that if any of those dreams and ambitions are rooted within that family dynamic, then you need to allow yourself to step away from that family dynamic and step away from that influence over your career decisions, because that family piece didn't even work out for your family itself. Therefore, it need not be a piece of influence within your larger career pursuits. Moon and Uranus in a quincunx relationship is also something that we see within the chart of people who have not necessarily dietary issues, but they have dietary peculiarities. And this is the person who's just a picky eater in general. When people have moon in any hard aspect relationship with Uranus, they have gut issues, not because they actually have diagnosable gut issues, but they have gut issues because they themselves are picky eaters. They're not going to eat the grain of rice if the grain of rice is cut in half. And so they're going to pick through the grains of rice to make sure that they're only eating the whole grains of rice and not the grains that are split. Moon Uranus is something that we oftentimes find within the charts of people who become vegetarians as a result of their anal retentiveness as far as their diet is concerned. And as a result of them becoming vegetarians, they end up later on developing iron deficiencies or an iron deficiency, which doesn't mean that just because you're a vegetarian, you're going to have an iron deficiency. I'm a vegetarian. And I've been dealing with my iron deficiency by eating dark leafy greens and making sure I'm eating a lot of garbanzo beans. And so there's that. There are ways to navigate that. But very often when people have the moon Uranus in any hard aspect relationship, it can sometimes indicate becoming a vegetarian as a result of being a picky eater and subsequently finding myself developing an iron deficiency, which forces me to need to re-eat meat once again. That's one of the things we also find with the moon Uranus in the quincunx relationship. And where was I going with this? He also has the moon square Jupiter, which is kind of nice, simply from the perspective that the Jupiter is signifying what? The moon Jupiter as a combination is signifying the happy mother, the happy home. However, there's enough going on within his chart that is pointing in the direction that says that that might not necessarily be the case, that we don't necessarily think that that is the case for him. The moon is also representing his siblings within this lifetime. And having my siblings conjunct Algol says that not only are my siblings possibly mentally unstable, but it's saying that I find myself losing my mind over the conditions having to do with my siblings. Having my siblings in the quincunx with Uranus is also saying to me, what is it saying to me? Brain. It's also saying to me that my siblings represented a very real source of instability within my life, which only further ties into the larger story of familial instability in my life, or the family instability within my life in general. And finally, having the moon in a square relationship with Jupiter ruling the 8th house of this chart, we know, because we're good astrologers, we know that the 8th house of anybody's chart is going to be the 6th house from their siblings. Therefore, having the moon in a square relationship with the Jupiter ruling the 6th house of the siblings, can be an indication that the siblings were chronically ill within the lifetime of the native, and that the siblings might still be chronically ill within the lifetime of this native. And as a result of that, that became a major, overwhelming theme within his life. And maybe it's also become a very expensive theme within his life if he finds himself having to financially take care of them, since the Jupiter is also the ruler of the 8th house of debt. So, all of these things being said, we may not have spoken specifically about the specific thing. Well, actually, he told me to just let it rip. So I let it rip. But also, what was I going to say in the universe? Also, we may not have specifically have spoken. What am I saying? We did speak about it. We did speak about the career, but we also spoke about a lot of other surrounding themes and a lot of other surrounding elements. And all of these things tie into the manifestation of him exactly as he is. And we are hopeful that, one, at this stage in his life, he's figured out how to navigate a lot of these things that might be very real challenges for him. But also, two, what is the number two? But also, two, we hope that within describing these things and really fleshing out some of these circumstances within his chart, he has the ability to have a moment of reflection and use that reflection as a means to help him create better choices and better decisions as he navigates this part of his life, which is his vocation. So now we're going to invite you back on the call, and you can unmute yourself and tell us how much of this landed for you, how much of it felt accurate for you, how much of it felt inaccurate for you, because the more you share, the more we learn, and the more we learn, the better we become at the astrology that we practice. So you can go for it.
Okay, thank you very much, Mychal. That was a very accurate reading, no doubt at all. I will apologize because English is not my native language, so I have a little lack of practice.
Mm-hmm.
But was so accurate that I have so many things to process. And well, let's see a few things. Everything you said about my parents was exactly as you said. And as you mentioned at the last part of the reading, I have been able to use my very cerebral self to figure this out throughout my life. So now I'm 50 and I have a very good relationship with both of my parents. And I think I have been more concentrated on being my own father and mother from within. And the thing that I have to resolve from now on is that I used to be rich, financially speaking. Everything burst into nothing in a point, and I became poor, literally. And my family, my siblings, and my mother rescued me from that situation. So now I have a big debt to all of them. That's the main issue that I'm confronting now. So as I said, I have a lot to think of. And I'm really, really grateful because it was a a remarkably open eyes lecture or reading.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Now,
But
I do.
tell you, sorry, I was going to tell you that I have a very um, large medical history, so I will share it with you by email in case you are interested in working with it.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. I look forward to receiving that email. Now, question for you before I go, just because this is something that I brought up, and also because it was kind of experimental. So I used the moon as your siblings within your chart because the moon rules your third house, and I used the Jupiter as illnesses of your siblings because the Jupiter is ruling the eighth house. Is there a story of chronic illness with the siblings within your life?
No, I have a dead one, but the only one that has a chronic issue is me.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it. Thank you so much for that. I just, there are some things that I know in the process of doing them. I know that they're experimental, but I still want to do them because it's only through experimenting that we actually can broaden our practice. So thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome. All right. People, I went overtime and Anna's going to kill me because I went very overtime and we are now at the end of our show for today. But I just wanted to say thank you all to all of you for showing up today. Also, if you came and we didn't get to your chart, my apologies. I really went deeply into that one and I should honor the fact that Anna is my 20-minute timekeeper. So thank you all so much for submitting your charts. Thank you all so much who came out to this. This is what I love doing. This for me is astrology in action. And this is what we practice. This is what we teach. And every astrologer who gives a reading at the Oraculos School of Astrology is put through an absolute crucible of torture. Sorry, it's not torture. But, we have a very high standard regarding what actual astrology looks like from a concrete event-based perspective. Not every astrology is concrete and event-based, which is fine. However, if you are going to be practicing from a concrete event-based perspective, then you need to be able to speak about concrete events that occur within people's lives. This is what we practice. This is what we teach. This is what we do here at the Oraculos School of Astrology. And if that's something that you want to learn how to do yourself, then by all means, join us in our upcoming Natal Astrology Intensive, which begins this August. I'm going to tell you right now, it begins this August 4th, 2024, from August 4th to August 10th, 2024, in which I'm going to teach you how to do everything that you've seen me do today in a far less chaotic way. I'm going to teach you my signature system for how to navigate destiny, essentially, and how to navigate fate. In astrology today, we don't really like to talk about fate. For whatever reason, I don't know when that became a thing. It became a thing around the psychological revolution when we all started to feel as if we were somehow extricated from the realities that impact the physical world around us. So today, we live in a world where astrologers say that there is nothing fated, and where astrologers themselves say that your life is always in a state of constant flux and you have nothing but free will. And this is true to a potential point. But when we talk about fate and destiny within the birth chart, what oftentimes gets ignored is the way in which our own fate and our own destiny is rooted within our own decision-making process. What manifests as fate within our lives is oftentimes the momentum of our own repeated behavior. So when we say to somebody that you can change your destiny and you can change your fate, what we're essentially saying to that person is you can change your repeated behavioral patterns. However, we live within a Saturnian world, and a part of living in a Saturnian world is for us to consolidate an identity of ourselves so that we can separate ourselves from the person on the side of us. And in the process of consolidating that identity, we consolidate things that are positive and life-affirming, and we also consolidate the things that manifest as major challenges within our lives. However, after you've gone through that over and over again, and after you've been party to those experiences over and over again, those experiences create a massive momentum within your life, and that momentum of familiarity is what manifests as fate and destiny. Which is why when we say to people, you have the free will to change what's going on with you, sure, it's a wonderful concept in theory, and it's also a wonderful concept if you have the sort of internal fortitude to turn back the hands of time on yourself. However, more often than not, we continuously slip within the patterns of what is most familiar to us, and that pattern becomes the challenges that we see being played out within our natal charts. When I studied Ayurveda with Dr. Vasant Lad, when his center was still in Albuquerque, New Mexico, he read my pulse. And the very first thing he said upon reading my pulse was, this young man is very physically active. He's probably a dancer, and he eats a lot of cheese. How does Basant Lad know that I eat a lot of cheese? Fine, the dancer thing, maybe I just hold myself like that in public in general, but how did he know that I consumed a lot of dairy? The reason for that is because within Ayurveda, when we're reading the pulse, we're reading the specific pattern of destiny that manifests within your body physiologically that can be read within your pulse. When we're reading a natal chart, we're reading the specific pattern of destiny that is crystallized within your natal chart. And all of our charts have the ability to tell a story of what will occur within our lives at least one time. However, the lead up to that one time required an entire lifetime. And undoing the effects of that one time will probably also require an additional lifetime. So when we talk about the juxtaposition between fate and free will, what we're really talking about is, do we have enough stamina to become a completely different version of ourselves? And more often than not, it's a challenge. More often than not, we end up falling on the familiar pattern of our birth chart because that is who we have always been. I have an aunt who, for a very long time, was a part of a spiritual yoga community. And however, she joined that community when she was 30 years old. And before that, she was a devout Christian, and she came from a very devotional Christian home. And at 60, well, not even 60, in her 50s, I would hear her still using a lot of this Christian language, a lot of these Christian phrases. And I was like, hey, you haven't done that for over 20 years. How is that still such a strong imprint within yourself? And she said to me something that I fundamentally believe to be true about even our natal promise. She said, Mike, it took me over 30 years to establish that pattern of behavior within myself. It's probably going to take me 30 years to completely get myself out of that patterning and out of that conditioning. And that is what we're looking at when we look at a natal chart. We're looking at the stellar image of a life of fixed patterns that specifically says not only who we are, but the experiences that we've been through and how those experiences directly augment how we show up within the world. So I'm saying all of this to say that fate is a very important concept within astrology, because what we see within the natal chart is that which is fated. What we see within the natal chart is that which we are destined to experience at least one time within our lives. However, for all of us, those of you who are here on this call right now, I know at one point in time we got up to 300 people. For the hundreds of people who are on this call right now, I want to let you know that just because you've been through something once within your life doesn't mean that that thing has to be the repeated pattern that you find yourself repeating over and over and over again within a lifetime. And to that end, all of us who are students of astrology, we are students of conscious living. Because our astrology gives us something that the regular person on the road who has no ability to navigate their destiny has. Our astrology gives us something that allows us to be able to step back and take a bird's eye view and study the machinations of destiny and how those operations directly impact our lives so that we can become more conscious participants in what's occurring within our life. And it's tough. I still love cheese, and that's written all over my natal chart. However, I, as an astrologer, should have the ability to see that that particular challenge is in my natal chart, and I should have the ability to turn back the momentum of behavior that causes me to rush downstairs to eat cheese every time I feel lonely or afraid. And all of us have our sufferings within this lifetime. We all have our blocks of Cabot extra sharp white cheddar cheese in our fridge that we need to extricate from our lives. And it might take a lot of heavy lifting, but that is essentially what we're here to do within this lifetime. Thank you so much for joining me here once again on the Oraculos Podcast. I'm super excited to be here. I saw Isaac in the chat. Isaac, happy belated birthday. I'm so happy to have you in my orbit, and I'm also looking forward to joining you at the Plant Cunning Conference. Everybody, the Plant Cunning Conference is going to be this July, end of July 2024. You can go and look up everything by taking a Google search and looking up the Plant Cunning Conference. That's where I'm going to be the weekend of July 28th, and I sincerely look forward to seeing you there as well. If you're on the East Coast and you want to come be with me in person, or you want me to deliver you your Oraculos goodie bag, it's empty right now, but I can promise you I can fill it with stuff. If you want me to deliver you your Oraculos goodie bag full of stuff, then come to the Plan Cunning Conference. Let me know you're going to be there. I'll bring you your Oraculos hoodie, your t-shirt, your everything, and signed copies of my book, Mastering Traditional Astrology, because I want to see you. And the Plan Cunning Conference is a wonderful place to make that happen. Also, I want to let you know that my books are now open. So if any of you want to book a reading with me, you can go over to my website at oraculosastrology.com and book a reading with me today. And anything that you've ever seen me demonstrate is something that I am capable of doing for you. Whether that is natal astrology, medical astrology, a solar return, our comprehensive annual reading, Kabbalistic tarot, dream interpretation, relocational astrology, you name it, I can help you navigate it from an astrological perspective. So please go over and book a reading with me for this month of July, because my books are only open for this month of July. I've gotten into the habit of enjoying opening my books on a monthly basis, because I also enjoy freedom. So if you want to book a reading with me, please go and book a reading over on my website. And if my books are closed because I'm overbooked, then please also go and support the students at the Oraculos School of Astrology who are also giving readings. And you can find out about all of these services on the services page of our website. If you've joined the broadcast late and you see me wearing all of my Oraculos merchandise, look at the shirt. Get into it. Do you see the hoodie and all of that stuff? If you want to purchase any Oraculos merchandise, you can go and check out our Oraculos store on our website at oraculosastrology.com/shop, where you can buy yourself a signed copy of my book. I spent all day yesterday signing those books. You might even get a sweaty copy of my book, because I was in a warehouse. It was very, very hot, and I did surely sweat on some of those books. So you will get a signed copy of my book, including my DNA, if you go on our website and purchase a copy of the book today. And this is specifically for those of you in North America. If you want to purchase the book on Amazon because you are outside of the US, then by all means, go and purchase your copy of the book on Amazon. And if you've read the books and you love the books and you purchase it on Amazon, then please do leave us a review on Amazon, letting the world know what you love about these books. I'm so happy that all of you are here. I'm so happy that you've chosen to join me. September, we're starting a brand new school year over here at the Oraculos School of Astrology. And I would love to have as many of you as possible join us in the classroom, because I really feel that what we offer here at the Oraculos School of Astrology is something incredible. And I am so blessed and so humbled to be the vehicle of that. So if you want to learn how to practice astrology in the way that I've shown and demonstrated, and that I've been demonstrating for the last 6 years, then please do join us for our upcoming Professional Astrologers Diploma Program, which begins this September 2024. And take the ride with me. It's a 2-year ride, but the 2 years are going to come and go in any event. So might as well you spend them learning concrete event-based astrology. That's all I have for you for today. I love you sincerely. like cooked food. Thank you so much for being here. All 284 of you who are still here on the call, please make sure to like the video over on YouTube. If you're still here on the call and you're watching on YouTube, please like the video so that YouTube can pay us our money, so I can pay my lovely Anna, who is here as our broadcast producer. I can pay my lovely Joe, who is also our lovely broadcast producer. Please help support us so that we can keep this sort of astrology free of charge right here on YouTube. And it'll show me that you get value from what we do. So like this video, follow us over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and also follow me over on Twitter at Oraculos Astro, where I'm going to be giving my daily astrological updates of things that aren't just going on in my head, but also things that are going on in the cosmos. So if you want to stay in touch, and if you want to keep your finger on the pulse of the astrology of the day every single day, then make sure to follow me over on Twitter at Oraculos Astro, where I'm going to start doing that as of tomorrow. So please don't miss out on the momentum and the magic that we're building over here at the Oraculos School of Astrology. My voice is shot. I'm done for today. TTYL in the universe. In the words of Christine Skinner, I love you, but I gotta leave you. Until next time. Next time being Friday, because we have another live stream, love stream on Friday for the astrology of the week ahead. I'll see you guys on Friday. Much love. Bye-bye.